What I love about my job is both the variety, setting up stuff that's just really cool, meeting amazing people, going off on foreign trips and not doing the same thing every day. I'm David Wilkinson. I'm the General Manager of the National Space Academy. I have to make sure that all the finances come in, that we get all the kind of paperwork done. That sounds boring. It is a good deal more interesting. I get to hang around when people are doing their presentations. I get to meet all the cool people. Sometimes I do lectures myself as well, and I can do presentations and things like that. A career in science takes you in many different directions, and you don't just stick to one thing. The National Space Academy was started in 2008. At the Space Centre here, we have an education team that deals with kind of junior school children and early secondary school. But the National Space Academy is set up to have teachers right across the country who are outstanding teachers, and they will go into schools, or you can come here and they will deliver real lessons, real science, but all with the space focus. We also have, we teach with Loughborough College, we teach a space engineering course, which is A-level physics, maths, and a double BTEC in engineering, again, all spaced. We've got two teachers on our staff, two physics teachers on our staff. We also have international work. At the moment, we're doing a big project in South Africa, where we've been teaching in township schools, but we've also been helping the South African National Space Agency to improve what they're doing. We do kind of professional training for people. We've been working with the RAF to make sure the RAF air cadets are taught proper space. And I had a meeting with something called the UK Space Command, which is now the UK's kind of lead on military aspects of space as well. I was born in Chesterfield. The first 6 years of my life, I grew up just outside Staveley near Chesterfield, which was in the coal mining areas. So I grew up in the Peak District, where there is incredibly clear sky. We had tents and we'd sit in a field, and at the end of the evening, we'd just lie on our backs and look at the universe. And it's just huge. And I don't know if you've ever managed to do this, but if you actually just lie and look at the sky for a long time, you see more and more and more. And it's a very strange experience. As your eyes get used to it, you see more and more. And that gives you the whole impression of what's out there. And all of this is combined with my absolute love of science fiction, reading it and watching it and so on. I went to a primary school, and then I went to a very large state comprehensive school. I did dual award science. I always knew I wanted to be a scientist, because the big thing about my past is I always wanted to be a doctor. From the age of 5, all I ever wanted to be was a doctor. And so my choices in terms of sciences and so on were all geared towards that. Whenever I did work experience, it was in hospitals. I did a lot of extra volunteering in hospitals and so on. And then in 1996, I managed to get to medical school, and I did a whole year of it and discovered I hated it. So at that point, I had to switch tack fairly rapidly. And so it was like jumping off a cliff in terms of the decision. But as soon as I said, no, I think it's time for me to leave, it felt like an enormous relief. But then when I was doing my A-level, we had this excellent physics teacher who introduced me to the concept of medical physics for the first time. And so when they came to saying, right, we're happy to transfer you onto another course, what do you want to do? I said, well, do you do any kind of medical physics? And they did. This was at Newcastle University. Having then graduated in physics with medical applications, I became a forensic physicist. And if there's one thing I want anybody watching this to take away, is if you do a science, you do not have to have one career for your entire life. You can have multiple different ones, and just be ready to seize the opportunities, and you can take them. My first job, with about a year to go, so entered my final year of university, and my girlfriend at the time had circled a job advert in the newspaper. It said something along the lines of, would you like to use science to fight crime, essentially. And she circled it, and so staggeringly, they offered me the job. So for my entire last year at university, I had a job offer waiting, but I had to get, a degree. So it really focused me on really knuckling down to make, because it was a staggeringly good-looking job. and at the time it was called the Police Scientific Development Branch. So people imagine a forensic scientist is something like CSI. You're going out and looking, and those kind of jobs exist where people go and look at crime scenes. They're called SOCOs. But this was original research. So this was equipment that the police might want to use, and the department that I got into was the Firearms and Protective Equipment department when less lethal weapons were just starting to come on the scene. I became the project manager for tasers on things like, are they robust? Will they hurt people? Will they kill people? Will they set fire to things? So yeah, it was a very exciting time. So while I was doing that initial job, I had a growing family. I'd had one baby and I was living in the southeast, and my salary paid for childcare and the mortgage, and there was literally nothing left over from that. And this coincided, I was a member of the Institute of Physics, and in the back of their magazine there was an advert for regional manager positions for the Institute of Physics, and one of those was for the Midlands, and so I applied for that and got it. But the key thing that happened while I was working at the IOP as the Midlands manager was in 2008. I came to the National Space Centre and met a guy called Anu Ojar, who just set up a space academy. And I still have in my desk drawer this note that I wrote for my director at the time saying, I think this space academy might be around. It's something interesting to look at. And so probably for about the last 10 years, I've been thinking, I'd like to work. It'd be great if I could work at the Space Centre. Wouldn't it be great? And then about a year and a bit ago, I got the job. So I did lots of different experiments with the public and so on, but the stuff that always gave me the most kind of like happiness to do was always the space ones. So it is incredibly varied what I do. I will not lie, there is some sitting down looking at spreadsheets. There are a lot of meetings. However, in a week I could go to a careers event at a school. I've done that before, so I go along and do a whole thing about space careers at the school. We went to Newcastle and did an entire space camp where we had 30-odd year sixes, 30-odd year 12s. They spent an entire week with us, and so I was helping to deliver that. I could then, the next day, I could be in a meeting with kind of like UK Space Agency. I've been in meetings with people in South Africa, in meetings with people in Kuwait, in the United Arab Emirates. So working out these kind of international things that we do, it's weird, you get used to holding things that have been in space. And of course, when I first started the job, wow, look at that, it's been in space, and now it's just, but you take it into a school, you put it in front of kids, and they have that same moment. Part of what we're trying to do is to try to convince people that it's normal to have a job in space, it's normal to have a career involved in the space industry. It's going to be bigger. There are going to be more and more jobs in the space sector in the UK. You can move across it. You can move into different areas. You can move from education to outreach, or you could move from experimentation to application, or you can move into management, or you can move into law, or whatever it is you want to do. Space is an entire field of endeavour. If you want a career that also will make a difference to humanity's future in terms of the environment, in terms of connectivity, in terms of lifting people out of poverty, space will unlock a lot of answers to our problems. And you will be doing good things, and you will be paid well, and there will always be a job for you.